I record all the lectures and post them all online. Which means if you have to, since attendance counts, you can make up an excused absence by watching a lecture online. Not because I think I'm really great on camera. My background, I mean, you guys have all been staring at this, but yeah, I graduated from BYU back in '78. I actually taught here from '85 to '87. But mostly had been out of industry, worked at General Dynamics, worked at NASA, worked at the Interplanetary Institute, worked at Monterey Labs. Did a startup software company with a friend of mine, did a game called Sundog Frozen Legacy. It has its own Wikipedia entry. And I still get fan mail about it. Wrote for Byte magazine back when we actually had computer magazines. Taught here at BYU. Did consulting in the Silicon Valley area, so I worked as a contract programmer at Apple, worked as contract tech support at Sun Microsystems. Did manuals for Borland back when Borland was a software company. Did another startup software company doing a desktop publishing system, raised venture capital, shipped our product. The only problem was it was for the Next Step operating system, and there was no installed market. Next Step, of course, is why Apple paid $400 million for Next, and Next Step became OS 10. Steve always liked the name of our project, or our product, which we actually shipped. It was a desktop publishing system called Pages. When Apple announced Pages, I had lots of people contact me and said, is that the stuff you guys did? I said, no, he just liked the name. It's their own code base. Anyway, went to work for OSG after Pages closed, having exhausted its market. Started doing consulting. First did some consulting for ARINC, Aeronautical Radio Incorporated. They were doing a network management system for the Iridium satellite project. And they were trying to do it with object-oriented technology, and no one there knew it, so they brought me in to be an architect and to bring up their OO skills. Then I went to work for a company called Object Systems Group, where I spent 3 years basically going into corporations that had troubled projects and helping to get them on track. Then was doing a lot of talking about failed projects and so on. Got drafted, and trust me, it was entirely against my will, into the Y2K effort. And the problem was I was living in Washington, D.C., it became very visible. I testified before Congress 3 times, which, to quote an old friend of mine, just shows that any damn fool can testify before Congress. It's actually a little scary at times, just what a interconnected hothouse Washington, D.C. is. Anyway, because of that, I ended up getting hired by PricewaterhouseCoopers specifically for their expert witness division. And they spent 2 years teaching me how to be an expert witness. And then during the recession of 2001, they sort of said, well, we're cutting out all these practices. But they gave me a bunch of cases that I was working on. I set up my own shingle. Really, since 1999, it's not long, 2001. Since 2001, I've been on my own. Doing consulting for corporations that have troubled projects. More should do that. I don't get as much of that. Mostly what I get is as an expert witness. Litigation involves computer technology. About half of them are failed IT projects. The other half are mostly intellectual property, patent lawsuits, software copyright, trade secret, theft of trade secret, and so on. And that's sort of me in a nutshell. Yes?
So, how did that happen? I mean,
which one?
What
part?
What led you to? Why have you been involved with so many different things? Is it because you have an interest in it? Is it because you have the skill set that's needed? Like what? Because a lot of people, I think, well, I don't really know what the industry is like, but do people sit in a company for 10 years and move every 10 years?
Actually, it's even much less now. But I mean, to be honest, 4 years after graduation, I was on my 4th job. I was sort of a trailblazer because that's sort of typical nowadays. If you stay too long in a given job, it's kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you out job hopping? I would have preferred a little more more stability. I can tell you the factors behind each and every job move, and they vary. They're all over the place. Some of it was, well, when I moved from Houston back to San Diego, I worked for Monitor Lab doing data acquisition equipment. It was a great job. I enjoyed it and so on. But then a friend from high school started his own software company. He said, hey, come work for me. I've already got the successful spell checker and we'll do computer games together. It's like, I'm there. And spent 2.5 years there and then burned out completely on programming. I actually didn't do programming for 4 years after I left there. Luckily, I had developed a writing career on the side, so I made a full-time living writing for Byte Magazine, for Macworld, and so on before I finally got in the position where I could start programming again. So in my case, it's more seeing stuff and saying, gee, that's cool. I'll go do that. Often because opportunities crop up. It's like PricewaterhouseCoopers. That came out of literally an executive recruiter who tracked me down because of the fact that I had done things like testified before Congress and so on. They said, yeah, PwC wants you to come in as a director and they'll pay you an insane amount of money and they'll teach you how to be an expert witness. And I'd always had an interest in law. So I said, oh, that sounds like fun.
Okay.
And it was great training. Anyway, any other questions about me? You can, yes?
What exactly do you do as an expert witness?
What I do as an expert witness, technically my responsibility is to the court. But I'm usually hired by one side or another. I've served several times as a neutral expert and once as an arbitrator. But as an expert witness, it is my job to deal with technical information that the trier of fact, be that the judge or the jury, would have a hard time dealing with. In other words, my role as an expert is to say, okay, here's this failed project. I've looked over 10,000 pages of documents. I've analyzed this. Here are the authorities. Here's this external methodology that I'm applying that says here are root causes of project failure. Here is this chronological sequence of documents that demonstrates those root causes. Therefore, this was the root cause of the project failure. In intellectual property cases, it usually involves analysis of source code. You wouldn't believe the source code I had to dig through. It's like, oh, H11 assembly. Oh, yes, I'm very conversant in that. Where's the manual? Anyway, and usually there, if it's trade secret or software copyright, it's saying, okay, did this body of source code somehow was it derived from this other body of source code? With patent lawsuit, it's here's a claim in a patent, and either here is source code that is prior art, potential prior art. Does this implement the claim in a patent? Or, if it's later, does this implement the claim in the patent, and therefore it's infringing upon the patent? So, anyway, it's very well paying when you have work, and when you don't have work, it pays nothing at all. So, my income tends to sort of, look like that. Occasionally looks like that. Okay. Anyway.
Must be fun for taxes.
Okay, our goals. Actually, you guys summarized well. It's basically, what are the root causes of success and failure? It's a practical experience. Basically, what we're going to do, we'll talk about it in a second, but you're going to propose ideas, you're going to vote on the ideas. Everyone has to propose at least one project idea. And this is going to be voting on it, and the top vote getters will be the 3 or 4 projects, and then you'll basically pick which project you want to work on, and we may do some forced rebalancing if necessary. And then you're going to go through the software development lifecycle. You have to build 7 hours a week. Put time in on it. It'll be a little hard at the start, and I'll be more forgiving at the start, because like org chart, okay, that's not going to require 7 hours by, say, 5 people, 35 hours. Okay, that's probably not going to happen. But the idea is that you're going to be producing these deliverables and billing time on it, and actually coding and developing and talking about stuff and having team meetings and so on. To better understand the sociological and interpersonal nature of software development. Most of you who talked about, having been internships and so on, talked about well, you know, I'm not sure if they knew what they were doing or there were communications issues or whatever. One of the biggest, and you know, you will hear me say this over and over again, software is an intensely sociological activity. And one of the biggest problems in the IT industry is that upper management thinks it's manufacturing. They think it's stamping out widgets or ditch digging or whatever. And it's an incredibly intellectual activity, and once you have more than one person involved, it's a very sociological activity. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. So learn to self-manage, okay? Again, those of you who, well, you're all students, you know what it's like about self-managing. It's kind of, don't procrastinate. And to learn to manage orders of ignorance. One of the things you're going to read is going to be an appendix from a book by Philip Armour called The Laws of Software Process. The appendix is called The 5 Orders of Ignorance. I actually went on the website and noticed that in updating the website, I managed somehow to delete the link to it. So I will repost that this week. Trust me when I tell you this will be one of the most important things you ever read in your career in software development. Because it describes what Brooks calls the essential complexity of software development. The fact that the value, and I'll summarize it briefly like this. Let's say I've written a program that does X. Now I want to write another program that does X. Well, it's very easy. I already know what to do it and so on. But that program has no value. So instead, I want to write a program that does Y, and the more that Y differs from X, the more potential value there is in it, particularly if Y is something that no one else seems to have done before. But the more that Y varies from X, and the more new and unexplored Y is, the more you're going to be lost in the weeds for a while. You are going to waste time trying to figure out how to do stuff before you discover how to do it. That's unavoidable. Trust me. I have literally been through this, particularly in doing some of the commercial software startup. And you have to appreciate that ahead of time. And what upper management often doesn't appreciate is how much invention is required in doing something new. And that means lost time and effort. You know, think Thomas Edison with his, I've discovered 10,000 ways, 10,000 materials which will not work in an incandescent light bulb, okay? Luckily, software isn't quite that bad, but that's an essential thing. So, how the class runs. Here, 2 to 4:30, every Monday. So we meet once a week. Keep in mind, this is a 3-credit class. This represents 3, rather than write up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do it all at once on Monday. That frees up my week for travel if necessary. I always start on time, so just know that. We will have biology breaks, so you don't have to sit there for an hour and a half, 2.5 hours. Attendance counts. I'll take roll typically 20 minutes, and I don't have a TA. Usually I have a TA take attendance. So we're going to have to pause at some point here and take attendance. If you're going to be gone, I've already had someone say, I've got this trip out of town on this special project next Monday. I said, that's fine, that's excused. I videotape the lectures, I post them online. All you have to do is come back and say, okay, well, watch the lecture and you get it back. Okay, you'll notice the big all caps, no open phones, tablets, laptops during class. I'm a firm believer in that. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. If you're not here with materials to take notes, go ahead today and leave it open, but just come prepared to take actual physical notes. Bless your hearts, I trust you all, but it's really easy to be sitting and checking, Facebook, Twitter, you guys probably Facebook, but, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you're doing right now. Working on other stuff, Webster's droning on a bit, I'm just going to look at this stuff. Taking physical notes is a good thing. All assignments are submitted through Learning Suite. I assume you're all familiar with Learning Suite. If not, come talk to me. I did a lot of cleaning up. When I taught this in winter, they didn't ask me until like the start of December. I pretty much just took everything that was already put together, plus I had a TA who'd been a TA previously, so he sort of ran everything. I don't have a TA right now, because they didn't assign me enough hours to attract a TA. And so it's been good because it's forced me to learn more about Learning Curve and about GitHub. But all your assignments will be submitted there through Learning Suite, Learning Curve, through Learning Suite. And once we have teams organized, we'll start devoting, and it'll slowly increase over the semester, but the last 30, 60, sometimes 90 minutes of the class period to team meetings. Any questions on that before I move on? Grading, everyone cares about. Attendance 8%, readings 25%, and we're about to go through each of these individually. The big thing to note here is that the final is optional and it's extra credit. If you like your grade at the end of the semester, you don't have to take a final. You can just walk away. Yes?
Now, a question about that, because I've seen similar things, but they haven't usually worded it as extra credit. Does that mean that theoretically, if you got a 0 on the final, it would not negatively impact your grade?
That's true. You'd still have the same grade you had before.
Sweet. It's not bad.
By the way, my attitude, and my students, I don't know how the department felt about it. My students last semester came out with a pretty high average here. My job here is I really don't care about curves at all. My job is to teach you all the best instructor I had when I was BYU's undergrad was differential equations class I had, believe it or not. The approach the instructor took was that he took us through the entire book in the first half of the semester. And then he started over and went back to chapter 1. He said, you guys don't know enough to ask the right questions going through the book the first time. So he literally force-fed us all the way through the book, and then we went all the way back to the first chapter, went through the entire book again, the second half of the chapter. I cruised. I didn't exert myself, and I got a B, differential equations, you know. My goal here is to try and help you to learn this stuff. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about competition. Now, if you don't do the work, you're not going to come out well, and I'm not going to have much sympathy for you, precisely because I'm making it easy to get a good grade here, folks. So if you slough off, it's your own fault. Midterm's going to be the big test. You'll see in a second. It's actually scheduled a little later. It's November 6th. It will be here in class. It will be electronic. It will be open book, open note. It'll take you, if you're really good and you know the stuff cold, it'll take you an hour and a half. It may take you 2.5 hours. Actually, when I gave it winter semester, we didn't have a class in the room afterwards, and there were a few people who it took about 3 hours. And we'll talk about what it is. So, this gives you the basic breakdown. We'll talk about each of these. Okay, readings, 3 books. You're lucky I made the last one do 4 books, but I cut it back to 3. No, these are thin books, nice print, big margins, very conversational. These are extremely readable books. I strongly recommend you buy them, but you're going to have to read them regardless, however you have access to them. Those books will help you well throughout the rest of your career if you stay in software development or actually IT in general. Online readings. I mentioned 5 Orders of Ignorance. You'll have a link to a PDF. And then, and I have absolutely no embarrassment about doing this because I've been writing stuff on software engineering for years. I've got 8 sets of what are, for the most part, blog posts by me. And typically, in each of these sets, it's 2 to 3 blog posts, and each blog post is maybe half a dozen paragraphs. I mean, quite literally, you could read through all 8 sets in about 2 hours. Okay. But this is stuff that we will be talking on in class, and when we get to midterm, you'll see why this may be useful. No, these readings will be very similar for midterm. Reading completions are logged into Learning Suite. You can read this head as much as you want, but try to stay on track with what's there. Yes.
When does that do, the reading? Is it right at the beginning of class? Because I didn't log mine.
Well, yeah, go ahead and log it. I won't worry about it. Typically, the reading stuff is due, I think it's set up to midnight Saturday at this point. It may be right at the start of class. I'll go back and look at Learning Suite.
Okay.
And I may change, for readings, I may change the start of class because the other stuff, the stuff that you're checking on your projects is typically due at midnight Saturday. Midterm, 25% of grade. Open in class, open book, open note, open device. It will be an electronic test on Learning Suite. And here's a sample question. This is what it's going to look like. It will pose a real-world situation, and then it'll ask you to comment on it. In this case, identify at least 2 major risk factors, at least 3 recommendations, with citation. So the citation is something like Brooks, Chapter 2, particularly this page. Glass, fact number 35. Glasses is facts and fallacies, and they're all numbered. So, as you are reading, as you're doing your readings, make and keep notes. Remember things, because keep in mind that when it comes to the midterm, you're going to want to find this stuff fast. The faster you can find it, the faster you get through the midterm. I had, even with this, and I really didn't decide on the form of the midterm until about a week before the midterm last semester. And I had some students complain, oh, if I'd known about that earlier, I would have done things differently in my studying. So you guys know now, this is what the midterm is going to look like. It will probably be about 5 questions like that. There'll probably be 1 extra credit question. I give you a chance to show off. If you know your stuff, you'll do well in class. So any questions about the midterm? Yes?
Does that mean it's only going to be 5 questions?
Well, it depends on how many points I have, but it'll end up being, the midterm will actually be 25 points, plus whatever extra credit it is.
Okay.
So this question here would be worth, well, no, actually, this is 5 points each. This is left over from last semester when the scoring was done differently. Anyway, it will probably be about half a dozen questions like that.
Okay.
And if you know the stuff well, you'll say, oh, yeah, I know where that stuff is. And again, folks, it's open notes, everything. You'll have access. I post all my lecture slides up there, too. What I'm really trying to do with the midterm is not to test your memorization, quite the opposite. I'm trying to get you to jog your memory and go find it and say, wait, I know this, I know what this problem is, and I think I know who talked about it. And you do some searching back and forth, because that is exactly the situation you're going to face out in the real world. Some manager is going to say something in one of your team meetings. You're going to say, oh my gosh, I know that's a problem. Where is it? And you'll go to your bookshelf and you're start looking through Brooks and Mark One Lister and Glass and whoever else you have and say, yeah, there it is. That's why we don't want to do this, because this is going to really cause problems. Any other questions about the picture? Kickstarter project. It'll all be run through GitHub. Is everyone familiar with GitHub? That's a bad way to phrase the question, because no one said, I don't know. How many of you feel uncomfortable with GitHub? It's not like you can use me as a tutor. This page is already set up. There's not much there. Basically, the first thing you're going to do is everyone needs to, in fact, let me bring up the page. Easy to do right here. Okay, here's the wiki. What you need to do is create a new page, put your proposed project there, and then add your proposed project to the list here, which means, of course, you'll have to go into edit mode and go in and edit the project to add it to the list. So I left a proposal example there from Joseph, who was the TA last year. So you can just copy his page and use that to set yours up. Plus, I have, and if we go back to the presentation, here Here's a wiki from last semester. I'm a firm believer in reuse. You have actual projects here. You have samples of all the deliverables here. If you're looking for a format for a org chart or for a test plan or whatever, don't reinvent the wheel. Look through the ones that are on the projects here and say, oh, I like this one, and use that instead. That's the true nature of reuse in software, by the way. It's usually non-code deliverables. So you can look at some of the ideas here. You can see here are some of the proposed projects from winter semester. And so what I need each of you to do is to create one project idea on GitHub this week. That's your 7 billable hours. Hopefully it doesn't take you 7 hours. Create that, and then start looking at other projects, and please try to do it before midnight Saturday, okay? Because we lost a week because we had no class last Monday. So put your proposals out there, and then I want everyone, particularly by class on Monday, to go out and vote on the 2 or 3 projects that interest you the most. And basically what we'll do next Monday is we'll look to see which projects have the biggest vote getters. We may do some in-class negotiation, and we will end up with 3 or 4 projects with everyone divided. You had a question first, then you.
So this is just a, I guess, whatever question. Are we expected not to vote for our own project in these?
Well, by all means, I would expect you to vote for your project.
Vote for your
If you're
own project.
proposing it, I would, yeah, strongly suspect you would vote for it.
I have to check the etiquette for it.
Yes. You know, unless you have some idea, I'll throw this up there, but I really don't want to do it. Maybe someone else will like
can
it.
do this.
Anyway, your question.
This voting thing, I'm not really familiar with it. Is it on GitHub or is it on the wiki website that you've got?
I'm sorry, the vote.
How do we vote?
Oh, you vote literally by going to the wiki. You'll have, each of you will add to this list here as you create projects. You'll create a page, so I'll have something like new page, you know, I'll call it Sundog.
Definitely voting for this one.
So I've now saved that out. Now I can go back to the wiki homepage, and I can edit it. This is actually pretty brute force, and I can come here and say, okay. And I'm hoping I'm doing this right because I'm not really a big GitHub user, so to speak. Copy this. I will paste it. Come on.
What if we're both trying to vote at the same time?
Did this like work successfully if multiple people editing at the same time?
Yeah. if
That's a
it's
good question. I assume it would have to.
If we're all
It's a
5
lot.
minutes before class trying to do our last minute voting.
Because you can't vote till after midnight on Saturday.
Well, you can vote.
No, you can vote earlier than that.
Oh,
You just may not see all the projects.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So I save it,
You might want to.
and now we've got 2 projects, and I've got 2 individuals for sometimes. So that's basically what, this is pretty primitive, okay? You're actually all editing the page.
So easy to exploit.
Hard code.
Anyway, I mean, you can always put, yeah, 10, everyone likes my project. But frankly, if it comes to that, and then someone says, okay, this looks what, you know, who wants to do sundogging? No one else raises their hand. It's like, okay, someone was messing with the vote total. So that's it. And if you don't vote by Monday, we'll do more voting in class. Yes.
Is there any like suggestions or constraints on these projects? Like, I mean, obviously not something too big, but like, I mean, I saw in their games, I saw, I'm assuming apps, just kind of
Anything that interests you. We've had, again, if you look at the wiki from last year, you'll look at all the different things. There were actually several games that were done. There was a restaurant, in the restaurant communication app, there was a geocaching app. Most of them were apps, not all of them were, actually all of them may have been apps. Anyway, so, and by the way, since someone asked me this, you guys can use whatever third-party tools and, you know, whatever languages you want to as a group. You know, feel free. You know, if there are engines out there you want to use, if there's libraries out there you want to use, if you can come to agreement on, you know, which language or set of languages that you want to use, go for it. I will not look at or grade your code. And as I said, you actually won't be graded on whether or not the project was finished. Because the point here is the deliverables that you're creating. Someone else raised the issue of intellectual property rights. You know, I can go find the license for you if you want, but pretty much, if you have any ideas that you consider proprietary, don't propose them for a project, okay? This is not the venue to do that. You know, consider that anyone with access to the wiki is going to have access to your source code, all your design docs, everything else, and so on and so forth. So, now there have been, I know from Chuck, there have been people in the past in the class who have gone on and actually sought to complete and commercialize their projects. But you know, usually it's the people working on the project. It's not like, oh, hey, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm going to steal their stuff off the wiki and I'll go commercialize it. Anyway, well, that'll teach you something about the software industry as well. The goal is to go through the software development lifecycle process as per the issue you raised. In other words, that's the main deliverables you'll have. Each of your deliverables has a deadline, and then you'll have 2 weeks. It'll be graded. And if you don't like the grade, you can correct it and resubmit it for a higher grade. And you'll have 2 weeks to do that. Yeah.
If we have 2 project ideas that we really like, can we propose both of them?
Oh, you can propose. Yes, you can propose multiple projects if you want. I just want everyone to propose at least one.
Yes.
And if you really can't think of one, but you know someone else is proposing one, you know, say, oh yeah, it's the same one that this person over here has. So just mark yourself off. It's all going to narrow down to just a few anyway. These are your project deliverables. Basically, next Monday we'll decide on a project. You'll actually have 2 things that you'll need to get done by Saturday night. One is to set up the wiki page for your project. And again, if you go back to the winter semester, you can look and see how people did that. You know, copy and paste is a wondrous thing in software development. Well, usually. And you have to come up with an org chart. Again, we're a little behind the 8 ball here, so you're going to have to organize really fast as a team. We will have teams assigned before the end of class. And then you're probably going to have a meeting outside of class and sit and hash out who's going to do what. We'll talk about organization next week. That'll be part of the lecture. Then you'll have requirements document, pertinent Gantt charts, architecture and design documents, test plan specification. Code review is an individual activity. It's not a group activity. By the way, 1 through 6 there, or 1 through 6 are done as a group. And when your group needs to, you know, have it done by midnight Saturday, and then everyone in the group checks off and says, yes, this is done. Each of you will do an individual code review. We'll talk about it at the time. And then the last thing will be an in-class video presentation of the project. Any questions here? Okay. Podcasts. Chuck, during all the years he was teaching this, Dr. Charles Johnson, those of you who weren't here, I mentioned this to some of the early arrivals. I'm taking over this class from a former student of mine who retired. Okay, that makes you feel a little old. It's true, it was an early retirement, he was 55, but still. Anyway, so Chuck did a whole set of podcasts. There's 20 podcasts. You basically need to watch 10, starting this week. A number of the podcasts have associated readings. Here's a pro tip. A few of them have associated readings that are like 50, 70 pages long. You may want to avoid those unless you really want to read the associated readings. There are 20 available. If you go to the, go to the website here. Materials, podcasts. Here are all the podcasts here. So you can click on one, and there it is. No associated readings. Tells you how many slides there are, how long it is. So you can.
This is the video podcast lecture on configuration management.
So this is a chance to cover specific topics that we won't cover in this much detail in class. Yes?
I see one that's like testing 1 and testing 2 and testing 3, 4, and 5. Are there any other ones that are like, you should watch these in this specific order?
I don't know because I haven't watched all these.
All right.
Actually, to be honest, I haven't watched any of these.
But you can testify that they're good.
No, actually, I couldn't. I would have to say, these are the materials I reviewed. Trust me, I always have an appendix in my expert reports that details every single document I looked at and or other resources. Anyway, so these are the podcasts. Back to there we go. There are 20 in all. You're gonna watch 10, and if you go, and now I'm gonna go back to here. Let's go to Learning Suite. We're about to take a biology break. We'll do roll after we come back, so I think you want to sneak away. It's too bad. Assignments. This is what the assignment page looks like. So you've got the assignment, you've got the date it's due. Most are set up with exams, but by exams it's like answer 2 questions, how many hours, and what did you do? Billable hours. So here are the podcasts. Oh, by the way, just so you know, there are no assignments. I don't think, I'll double check. Pretty sure there are no assignments that are due the week before the midterm, and there are no assignments that are due the week of Thanksgiving. Just so you know. On the other hand, guys, I expect you back here on Monday. Yeah, nice stuff. So this is the page you'll come to check everything in. They all have dates and times and so on. Okay.
Can we do those,
Oh, sorry.
can we do those podcasts at any time? Like, will those be on Learning Suite so you can submit them whenever?
You can submit, they're a Learning Suite, you can submit them whenever. You're expected to keep up, in other words,
Yeah.
don't be late doing them.
I'm assuming it wasn't available in Learning Suite yet in our view, but
I'm sorry?
it's not available in Learning Suite yet.
Oh, seriously?
The readings aren't either. We can't mark our reading.
Okay. Okay, hang on a second here. Dashboard.
Top right, you can view the student view.
Oh, I'm sorry, top right. No student view.
Just click on grades or assignments.
Great.
Pretend you were speaking.
Apparently we can't submit anything.
Okay, hang on a second here. I'll look at that at the break. I think I may have to click publish somewhere.
Oh.
Latest updates I did. Okay. Thank you for calling that out. I would have felt really bad. Opportunities for extra credit. You know, guys, again, you can get a good grade if you want a good grade. There is a list of pre-approved books, all dealing with basically software engineering, particularly project success and failure. You can read any of the pre-approved ones. Each one's worth 2%. They're all good books, frankly. That's why they're on the list. If you want to read something not on the list, come talk to me first and I have to decide. Yes?
As a curiosity question, how long are most of these books on the approved list?
Most of the books are like this. In fact, they come from a recommended reading list, and they're mostly trade paperbacks, thin, readable. They're on a list that I maintain on one of my websites specifically as stuff that maybe upper management could get through. And you know, I say that with all due respect, but you know, you don't want their eyes to glaze over. Final exam, same thing. If you're happy with your grade, you can skip the final. Otherwise, you can take the final and try and get extra credit. And you know, like I said, if it's 0, you still have the same grade. It's not gonna. The final will not pull your grade down. So if you attempt the final and you blow it, you'll still walk out with the same grade you would have if you didn't attempt the final. So it's not a risk thing. And that's it. Let's take a break, biology break. We'll start again. How close to the bathrooms here?
Just like around the corner.
Okay, in that case, we'll start at 3. Yeah, Marv is. This is actually the first time I've been in the worst building. First time. Well, I stopped in earlier to make sure I knew what the class was, but yeah.
They put us here because computer scientists.
No, I'm pretty sure he was not here.
You're older than this building.
Yeah. I'm older than dirt, trust me. But no, it wasn't here in the 70s. There was actually a fair number of buildings around that weren't here in the 70s.
Yes, extra credit in English recently updated. From before, there's like all the sections of like one on innovation, one on.
Yeah, no, I blew it all away.
Okay.
Put my own stuff. Just those.
There's two outputs that don't come in the same package. This is
Also, an important point, again, this is the sort of thing that I was relying on a TA for last semester. Forget. I need all of you to send me your GitHub IDs. I believe I actually need to add you to the wiki manually. So I've sent you all emails. You should have my email address, or if you go to the cs428 site, let's see here.
how do we find this site?
Oh, I've sent this out a few times.
Is that in your email?
Yeah. It's a sequoia.cs.bya.edu/cs428 site content overview. Here's my email, bwebster@bfw.com. Frankly, if you Google me, you'll probably end up on my website where you can find my email as well. So yeah, get me your GitHub IDs and I can add you to the wiki. I believe I need to do that explicitly.
What email those to you?
Yes. Yeah, just send me an email. And let's... Any other questions before we dive into... Yes?
Not to dive too much into what you're up to, but you said by appointment. Are you on campus more so like 3 days out of the week? If you're only teaching once, then...
No, I'm usually only here Mondays. And at this point, I actually showed up this morning and I didn't have an office. And Gordon apologized. He said, actually, the person in your office was supposed to be out by now, but we're moving her somewhere else, and that area isn't finished yet. So I have a temporary office at this point downstairs. It's full of other crap. I'm not sure where I'm going to end up on a regular basis. But at least I have an office and a key to it. I could maybe one other person in there. So it's by appointment at this point. Typically what will happen as we get into the semester, I usually come on campus around 10 and just do my final prep here on campus. I'm available typically from 10 up until class starts. And at this class, there are a couple of you who were here early who said there's nothing in here at 30 minutes till, which I thought I had found a class that was scheduled here at 1:50. So if that's true, I may get here early. Anyway, so, and I think I put my phone number there as well. Did I? Let's see here. Yes, I did. So you can always just text me and say hi. Can we meet? Or do we need to talk or whatever. Anything else on the stuff we've covered so far, besides the fact that I've got to figure out what the heck's going on with the this week? Okay, roll. Nolan Anderson. Here. Yeah, just call out here. Reg Ballard.
Here.
And if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Alicia Banskoda. Okay. Okay, Rachel. How do you pronounce your last name? Ben Gojia? Okay, here's what child was.
Yep.
Rachel. Jasmine Carson.
Here.
Adam Carl. Was it Carl? Charlton. Charlton. Okay, so it's a CH. Okay. Mitchell Clements.
Here.
Scott Croson.
Here.
Croson.
Crossing. The
Croson.
second.
Short of. Okay. And Cole, I know you go by Cole. Cole Fox.
Here.
Sean George.
Here.
Dagan Holbrook.
Here.
Trevor Lyon.
Here.
Joshua, you go by Josh, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Josh Nelson. Yeah. Catherine Rasmussen.
Here.
Stephen. Here. Richards. Yeah. Taylor Renshaw.
Here.
Sorry, that was out of order. Gavin Robertson. No Gavin. Jesse Robinson.
Here.
Tatum Sims. Neil Spackman.
Here.
Mission Ben Spackman.
Ben Stackman. I don't know, my grandma had like
Okay.
13, 14 kids.
Okay.
Maybe.
He's an LDS scholar I'm good friends with. So Matthew Tays, Matt, do you prefer
Yeah.
Matt?
I usually go by Matthew, but I
Matthew. Okay,
respond,
that's
though.
actually sure it's on the roll. Matthew's here. Tyler Udi. Did I pronounce that right? Udi. Okay. Jake Whitaker.
Here.
And Elise Weissman.
Here.
That's pretty good. Only two not here. I'm impressed. Okay. We are going to, and I know it was short notice, but then again, that's why I kept sending out emails. Mythical Man Month.
Oh, no 7.
No stuff.
No 7. Wrote 7 on the email.
Oh,
1, 2,
okay.
4, 5,
Well,
7.
see, you're already one chapter ahead for next week. Actually, I have that's my fault because I know on the course schedule at the Sequoia website, 7 is for the following week. Okay, Mythical Man Month. Probably the preeminent classic in software engineering, and with good reason. I have been, again, a practicing software engineer for over 40 years. I have written a lot on software engineering, and just about every time I think I have come up with some new insight, I'll go back and reread Mythical Man Month and Aaron Fred Brooks' massive sentence, and he's already touched on it like 40 years ago. I've actually had the honor of corresponding with him. My original 1975 edition is autographed by him. But he really got to the heart of the issues, and what's so sad is that these issues have all been well documented, starting with him 45 years ago, or 40 years ago, and they remain the root causes of software failures today. And there's a lot of software failures. I have my Google News tab. I have lots of news tabs I go through every day. My Google News tab has a number of search phrases, one of which is failed software projects. And it's just, it's always populated with stuff. Here is the core problem. I mentioned that I worked at ARINC. I was brought into ARINC. They were doing the network management software for the Iridium satellite project. It had a disastrous design review. They hired me as a consultant because I'd written a book called Pitfalls of Object-Oriented Development. And the vice president of division said, I went out and bought your book and read it and said, oh my gosh, these are all the things we're doing wrong. So they brought me in, and besides trying to bring their OO skills up, and they didn't actually have an architecture. They had like 4 design documents, and if you put them together, they didn't fit. I literally had to do an overall architecture document and then redo the design documents to adhere to that. But I was also involved with getting their project back on track, and one of the things I asked, I said, you know, can I buy copies of the Mythical Man Month for everyone? The anniversary edition had just come out. And the vice president was sure. I bought 30 copies and literally handed them out to every single person in the division, from the vice president all down through the managers and all the workers and so on and so forth. And about 6 to 8 weeks later, did a survey, and not a single person had read the book. And that was sort of like, okay, this is the software industry in a nutshell. The problem in the software industry is that it's not that the core problems are unknown, it's that, or undocumented, it's that no one ever reads it. Instead of, you know, it's not an issue of reinventing the wheel. Our industry keeps reinventing the flat tire. And it's really sad to see these massive, massive software failures that could have been prevented if anyone had actually cracked open a few of the books that you're going to read this semester. And you will find this when you get out in the real world. It's like, oh, our project's late. Let's add more people to it. It's like, no, wait, that doesn't work. So yeah, it does. Yeah, we'll get. No, it doesn't work. We've known for 40 years that doesn't work. Actually, it sometimes works, but it's in very specialized circumstances. So that's why we're doing Mythical Man Month. Okay. This first chapter, the tar pit, he has a little 4x4 square where he talks about relative complexity of software efforts. And the simplest one is the program you're doing for yourself. I mean, how many of you are doing little coding projects for, you know, yourself, or have done so? Yeah. So that's sort of the first level. But then you have the, well, let's commercialize this. So suddenly it actually has to be finished. It has to be relatively defect-free. You have to worry about documentation. You have to worry about compatibility. How am I going to release it? What's going to be? And so on. So you've added that level of complexity. Then from the simple program, he moves over to the corporate equivalent of the personal program, which is when a corporation does a complex software project that's meant entirely for internal use. It's far more complex, but it's not a commercial product. And so it's less of an issue. And then down in the bottom right quadrant is the most complex of all, which is a complex project, complex, what he calls a programming system, that's commercialized. So there's stuff like an operating system that you're commercializing, enterprise resource planning, so on and so forth. So first you have to understand when you're looking at the project, what are the levels of complexity? Because that will impact what the pitfalls are. Beyond those four, what are other things that you can think of based on your own experience that adds to complexity of a software project? Anyone? You? Yeah.
I haven't ever worked on this, but internationalization of projects.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever need to rewrite your design documents in different languages, that's going to take people who have that skill set, and it's going to take them time.